Artificial intelligence, or AI. Is it important to better understand it in today's innovative and rapidly evolving technological landscape? At Towerpoint Wealth, we firmly believe so. Harnessing and utilizing AI does not have to be a complicated process, and instead of fearing artificial intelligence or discounting it as a technology not to be bothered by, we believe that AI should be embraced as a tool that can enhance efficiency, help solve complex problems, and unlock new opportunities. So with this in mind, we recently hosted what turned out to be a very popular webinar focusing on these artificial intelligence considerations. Hi, my name is Joseph Eschleman. I'm the president of Towerpoint Wealth, and I moderated this AI webinar event. We were lucky enough to be joined by three expert panelists: Linda Duessel, the Senior Equity Strategist at Federated Hermes, Chris Gannatti, Global Head of Research at WisdomTree, and Michael Grant, who's the CO-CIO at Calamos Investments. The panel delved into the fundamentals of AI, exploring its real-world applications, and also discussed the ethical considerations that come with this powerful technology. Our expert speakers also shared their experiences and perspectives around AI, as well as what the future has in store for artificial intelligence applications. It was a great event, and it was truly a privilege to have Linda, Chris, and Michael in one virtual room with all of our attendees. If you were unable to attend the webinar live, fear not, as the full recorded webinar is now available for you to watch at your convenience. So get comfortable and enjoy Towerpoint Wealth's latest educational webinar, AI Decoded: Unlocking the Secrets of Artificial Intelligence.
You unlock this door with the key of imagination. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of data, a dimension of tech, a dimension of algorithms. You're moving into a land of both human intelligence and machine learning. You've just crossed over into the AI zone.
Well, that was quite the intro, and good afternoon to our three esteemed panelists, as well as our Towerpoint Wealth guests this afternoon, and happy Halloween, being today is October 31st. My name is Joseph Eschleman. I'm the president here at Towerpoint Wealth, a boutique wealth management firm located in downtown Sacramento, and today we look forward to talking a little bit about artificial intelligence and decoding AI in a way that hopefully makes some sense to our guests and is palatable and digestible, and hopefully everyone has a little bit better understanding by the time the webinar is through. So that intro, the Twilight Zone intro, certainly was, at least in our opinion, a pretty darn good one, and part of the credit for that goes to our marketing specialist here at Towerpoint Wealth, Luis Barrera. I did say only partial credit does go to Luis, not that he's not excellent, because he is, but AI, or artificial intelligence, also gets partial credit. Luis used a piece of generative voice AI software from 11 Labs for that Twilight Zone voiceover. So we thought that was a good way to kick the event off by leveraging and utilizing some AI tools, and we thought that turned out pretty well. So again, thank you to all of our guests. We extend our heartfelt gratitude and to our three expert panelists for joining us for AI Decoded, Unlocking the Secrets of Artificial Intelligence. So before we dive into today's topic, let me kick things off with just a touch of humor, as we like to do here at Towerpoint Wealth. I have three short jokes. The first one actually was generated by the most famous of AI interfaces, that being a ChatGPT. What do you call it when a hedge fund manager loses her job to an AI-based algorithm? Answer, it doesn't matter. We're all too busy laughing to care. A little dig at hedge fund managers there. Number two, the AI community tried to create a machine smarter than Chuck Norris. The result? Well, Siri now responds to all questions with, "Have you tried asking Chuck Norris?" It's a little difficult to tell jokes without a reaction from the crowd, but hopefully we're garnering a few smiles. Number three, AI once asked Chuck Norris for his thoughts on machine learning. Chuck Norris replied, "Machines learn from me, not the other way around." Not bad, I think. So they say that artificial intelligence is the future. And if that's true, then the future looks brilliant and albeit a tad intimidating. And today's webinar certainly, again, is designed to demystify AI. And we're eager with anticipation here at Towerpoint Wealth to hear the insights of our three expert panelists. So understanding today's highly unsettled economic and political and obviously investment environment, I briefly would like to underscore our commitment to education here at Towerpoint Wealth. And our overarching mission here at the firm is to help all of our clients remove the hassle of properly coordinating all of their financial affairs so you can live a happier life and ultimately enjoy being retired. And one of the primary ways we seek to deepen these client relationships and partnerships is to educate our clients about what's happening in today's world. So we encourage all of our guests to sit back and enjoy the Artificial Intelligence Forum. So we have a little bit of housekeeping first. All participant lines will be muted, but there will be a live question and answer session at the end. If a question does come up, please ask it virtually through the chat function here at Zoom. We will log the questions and try to do our best to answer all of them at the end. Obviously, adjust your audio settings on your computer, and you can maybe toggle between speaker view and gallery view as a guest of ours to see what you might like more. And within the next 48 hours, we expect to have a full recording of today's webinar and look forward to disseminating it to everyone. So getting into the meat of our presentation, I'd like to first allow each of our experts, artificial intelligence panelists, an opportunity to introduce themselves. And first up, we have Chris Gannatti, who is the Global Head of Research for Wisdom Tree. So Chris, we certainly appreciate your time. If you could take just 45 or 60 seconds to introduce yourself, I think all of our guests would appreciate it.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. Chris Gannatti. Worked for Wisdom Tree back since 2010, so it's been roughly 13 years. Crazy to think. We've been focused on artificial intelligence and the thematic area of investing really since 2018. And I've experienced that both in the European market. So I lived for 5 years in London and just moved back to North Carolina. I'm right outside Charlotte today. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, we're pleased and look forward to getting your input as a Global Head of Research for Wisdom Tree. So thank you for that. Next up, we have Linda Duessel, who is the Senior Vice President at Federated Investments. Linda, thank you in advance for taking a little bit of time to help our guests better understand and know who you are. And I think we have you on mute, Linda.
Sorry for that. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm Linda Duessel with Federated Hermes, and we're headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we've been around for many years. We're a mutual fund company. We also have some ETFs out there. And I work for now almost 40 years in this business, and at Federated Hermes for 34 years. And I'm a market strategist. I'm a strategist, so I basically work in trying to figure out what the market's going to do. But then I also will study areas of interest for advisors and their clients. And I travel the country basically and talk to groups about other matters. And this is one of them, AI, artificial intelligence, which is not particularly an expert, but I'm looking at it from the aspect of we really need to get a sense of what it is to explain to people and how one might invest and what one might expect. So very excited to be talking about it today. Thank you.
Well, we're excited to have you, and we appreciate your expertise and insights here, Linda. So that's absolutely wonderful. And then last up, we have Michael Grant, who is the Co-Chief Investment Officer at Calamos Investments. So, Michael, we appreciate you, and a little bit of background would be wonderful.
Sure. Well, thank you, Joe. Pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the co-CIO of Calamos. Calamos is an alternative-based asset manager founded in the 1970s by John Calamos. The firm has always been the leader in alternatives, beginning with convertibles and then alternative mutual funds in the 1990s. My responsibility here at Calamos is global long-short strategies. Our core strategy is a strategy that I founded 20 years ago in early 2002. It's the #1 performing long short in the Morningstar category over that period of time. And the simple difference between our product and many others is that we're not just focused on risk-adjusted returns. We're equally focused on absolute returns, and therefore beating the major benchmarks over time, which we've done. So I'll stop there.
Well, that's great, and hopefully we can weave in some of your expertise, obviously, in terms of how that translates into the world of artificial intelligence, Michael. And we're happy to have you here. So I have an initial set of questions just to kind of kick things off and have this be productive, hopefully for all of our guests. Linda, I'll start with you, but I'd like to have everyone, Chris and Michael included, weigh in. Just on a very simple initial question, and we get this a lot. We hear the phrase artificial intelligence; it's all over the news. Can we define that? What exactly does that mean? And if we're going to sit here and try to demystify it, I think we have to have a foundation on what exactly artificial intelligence is. So, Linda, if you could start, and then perhaps we can speak to Michael and Chris as well.
Yes, sure. And, I think it's really interesting that you start this presentation with a Twilight Zone kind of song going on there, because when I travel the country and we bring up artificial intelligence, people they shake their head, they're scared. They think it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's a scary thing. And I think the thing that I really came to learn in studying AI and how fast it is progressing now throughout the world, really, it's really got a lot more going well for it, good for it than bad for it. And it's all about productivity and enhancing productivity in our lives, our fullness of our lives, and in productivity in business of all manners, of all industries, really, that will change our life for the better in the most part. But what is artificial intelligence? It's intelligence, and it's artificial, so it's computers. It's the intelligence of machines, and it's really, I think, used as an umbrella term, artificial intelligence. But when you think of computers, the processing power, the computing itself, that can be cognitive, can learn and just improve on itself and just become better technology in terms of a computer, the text part, natural processing, machines, robots, and then the neural networks and the ChatGPT that you brought up on introduction as well is what's really super exciting these days.
Yeah, and I think Linda hit the nail on the head where the phrase machine learning somewhat goes hand in hand with that, and I do believe that adds a little bit more context than just this nebulous phrase artificial intelligence. Michael, I don't know if you have anything in particular to add to Linda's comments, but welcome any thoughts you have.
Sure. Well, AI is actually a very old concept and old technology. It first emerged in the 1940s. So it's not new as a concept, and the engineering of how it works today is very old. What's new is that we now have the data available to run these concepts, and we now have the processing power as well. So I don't think there's anything truly innovative about what's happening today with AI, except that we have discovered, or someone has discovered, an element of logic with respect to how our natural language capabilities work, and the role of those natural language capabilities in how we look at the world and gather data. So I think that was a key innovation.
Right.
But beyond that, your statement that we need to define and demystify is absolutely right. This is nothing more than a communication technology like all the others that came before it. And I often quote the Socratic dialogue of 2,000 years ago between the god Theith, who invented numbers and calculation and geometry and astronomy.
What god was that, Michael? I'm sorry.
So this is from a Socratic dialogue, and it was a conversation between a god called Theith and the king of the Egyptians, Tamus. And Theith wanted to spread these inventions amongst the people of Egypt. And one of those inventions was the written word. And he presented all of his inventions to the king, and the king would comment and give him feedback. And then when he came to writing, the king said, wait a minute. This is not a good idea, because it will provide my people, and I'm going to quote here from the dialogue, with the appearance of wisdom, not with its reality. Your invention, the written word, will enable them to hear many things without being properly taught, and they will imagine that they have come to know much. Well, for the most part, they will know nothing, and they will be difficult to get along with, since they will merely appear to be wise instead of really being so. Well, we could pretty much say any of that about the internet and a lot of these new developments. So I think humility is one of the key ideas we should keep in mind in this conversation.
Well, I think a general skepticism there as well about any technology, be it the written word a couple thousand years ago or more recently the internet. And while AI itself is not a new technology, it certainly has blossomed here over the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And a healthy dose of that skepticism and humility. It's good input, certainly very applicable in terms of what we're talking about today. So, Chris, I don't know if you have any additional historical perspective, or we welcome your viewpoints on, if someone talks to you at a cocktail party and asks you what the heck AI is, how you answer it.
Yeah, it's interesting to see essentially that what we've used it for so far, the bulk of the processing power has been trained on recommending stuff to watch. That stuff could be advertisements, YouTube videos, ByteDance, TikTok, depending what state you're in. All sorts of just ways in which you can take some of your time and watch something, and then companies profit upon that in all sorts of various ways. So something I'm intrigued by is to see whether this sort of newer system, this generative system, which was popular, even though it was in effect since 2017, it was popularized by ChatGPT and developments there. Does that lead us in any new directions? Meaning, is it able to recommend or help in creating new drugs? Is it able to help in driving cars in multiple different cities without drivers? There are true, interesting, innovative things that maybe AI will be able to do in, say, the next 5 or 10 years. But one path might be we're still watching and seeing different types of advertising, and maybe that's still the same main thing that it's used for 5 years forward. But my personal hope is we're going to be able to diversify the functionalities that we're faced with from this technology.
Appreciate that feedback and input. my takeaway as I listen to you speak, Chris, is that, that there's, and I could be wrong, but somewhat more of a commercial bias to this. And, when you talk about, the innovation and development of new pharmaceuticals and drugs, or, how we improve self-driving vehicles, are we not there yet in terms of AI, or is AI more focused just on, kind of speech and text improvements? I don't know if Linda or Michael have any thoughts based on what Chris said as well, but just curious if that takeaway is fair, or if not, what optimism should we have in terms of what else AI can possibly do?
Well, AI has been used for much of the last decade by a lot of the autonomous driving companies. There's probably 15 or 20 companies that are using AI to try to solve this problem. I think the key development was what we call generative AI, which is the use of AI with respect to language. And I think that impact is important, and it will affect industries that are word intensive. The legal industry, the education industry, the medical profession. We're definitely going to see a productivity impact on these industries, as we will in something, for example, like software development. Software is an engineering language, and we're already seeing evidence of how generative AI can materially increase the efficiency of a software engineer. We all understand Moore's law and how that has reduced costs in semiconductors, but we've never had the same cost dynamic play out in the software world, which is why it's so expensive. So you can dream that one day anyone can write software, and the cost of software collapses and so forth. So it's definitely going to have an impact, but we need to think in more granular terms about where and when.
Linda, anything to add to Michael's comments? Or, I guess, the theme really is, where we are today versus what can AI do, 3, 5, 10 years plus into the future. I welcome your perspective on that.
Well, we talk about when AI first came to pass, and back in 1950, there was a paper written about it. First time it was ever mentioned. And it was not until basically not until like 1993, when we had the World Wide Web and the internet boom that just began. It took 7 years to get to 100 million users of the internet. And I remember back then, I was afraid of technology every bit as much as I am today. I thought, I hope this goes away. And how silly that sounds right now, when we all are so very much attached to our telephones and all the technology that we have now. So that if it took 7 years for that, it only took 2 months for Chat GPT to proliferate, which is what's very interesting about now, is it's happening so very quickly. And it's happening so quickly that it's important that you have calls like this where people can kind of get more comfortable with it and what it can do for us. And in terms, just to add on to it, what the gentleman said in terms of some of the case uses, there are some very exciting ones that we have now that are going to only get better and better. And from my research, it'll only be maybe 3 to 5 years where, for example, well, even today, the GPT-4, I believe, can pass the bar exam right away. The generative AI can pass tests that doctors and nurses must pass to have their profession. So you can get a lot of help about it. That's where productivity really, really comes in. It's fun when you think that there'll be a smart fridge one day that will look at what you have inside and say, we would recommend that you make this dish for dinner. This one's getting towards expiry and you may need to throw that away. Or right. I may want to go ahead and check out what a certain lipstick would look like on me before I order it. And I can do that on AI. This is very, very close to happening. And, and I don't know if you want me to go on about the kind of what's going to happen probably with jobs out there, to the good and the bad, but there's going to be a lot of change happening, and that will be disruptive and mostly quite helpful, quite useful.
Yeah, well, I think from a productivity and technology standpoint, certainly, useful and productive are wonderful words. When I hear a word like disruptive, As a business owner, that's good. We're always looking to innovate and improve and disrupt, if you will. As an employee or worker, if you will, I've got major concerns. Obviously, depending on the industry, and Chris and Michael, I'm sure, can attest, as well as yourself, Linda, that this is something that there's a lot of individuals out there that see this not as a positive, but as a negative. And so I guess I'm curious, and any one of you can jump in, please. How AI not only is here for our benefit, but where could this potentially be problematic?
Well, in a sense, if you think about it, if we're saying these systems need to train on certain amounts of data, and maybe those data come from the corpus of the entire internet, there are problematic things that exist on the internet, and it could reflect back our various biases, our various judgments that maybe we'd like to move beyond. And so sometimes what can happen with the software is it does become trained on and can reflect back certain types of bias based on the training data. Now, there are ways to mitigate that if you're paying attention to it. But it's not always the easiest thing. And sometimes in the earlier development in recent years of certain models, maybe it wasn't even done. So there are these issues that do creep in and do reflect back some elements of human bias that are definitely still there.
And if I may, it's not knowing, not understanding that makes us worried. Am I going to lose my job? And it's probably been 10 years now since there was it was a big push around the country for a minimum wage hike. And I would be quizzed about this in my travels. What about the minimum wage hike? And I'd say, as much as they're pushing for this type of thing, you could complain that a McDonald's worker isn't getting paid enough. But I can tell you that more and more McDonald's are being run by just one person and a lot of machines. And we're seeing that. We're seeing this happening in banking. So the jobs that are at risk are some of the more mundane jobs, some of the more routine jobs, which you might like. You might love that if you were a nurse, to have the paperwork being done for you to help you with that. Or if you were a doctor, teledoc, we have it right now, for example, are very helpful things. But I would not want to think I'm going to have a long career being a retail salesperson. That job is in very serious danger. But if there were a job that you really need the personal touch, these jobs, teachers will always be needed. Therapists will be needed. Gosh, jobs that are
and wealth advisors, Linda, don't forget about that.
Which one now?
Wealth advisors.
Oh God, yes. Absolutely. Yes. And of course, in your business, and you can be very much helped by what can be done here. For me, what was really, really exciting in my study is two things: autos and Tesla. And Tesla's been collecting, millions and millions of pieces of information daily, and their own supercomputer they say they may use in Twitter, for example. So it reminds us that businesses, any business, better learn how it can help them. And then if you're a student, go ahead and study to be a nurse. You're going to need a lot of nurses, and watch out for those more routine tasks, or the tasks that can be done a lot on a computer. So I don't know if we're going to need near as many lawyers in the future.
Yes.
Well, I think
a lot of jokes there. I'll just not touch.
There was an interesting headline in yesterday's Wall Street Journal: will AI replace financial advisors?
Absolutely.
And I think we all agree that for mundane tasks, this is a tool with tremendous productivity. But there's a lot of evidence that the use of AI can reduce creativity. So we've seen some studies with consultants who, one group relying on AI and another group not relying on AI. And there's no question that the group that keeps going back to AI, its creativity falls. Mm-hmm. And we understand the reason for that, right? A creative group requires a diversity of thought, a willingness to follow a strand of thinking, even if it doesn't make sense on the surface, but maybe it leads somewhere.
Sure.
So to the degree that an advisor's relationship is driven by creatively, right, solving or meeting someone's individual circumstances, I don't think they're threatened at all.
Yeah, and I just kind of submitted that obviously to complement some of the examples Linda said, but your point's well taken, Michael, is, we've had clients that asked us, are you worried about, AI or Amazon replacing, be it a doctor or an attorney or financial advisor? And, I think it's really, the impetus is on these different professions to learn about it and embrace it, to become more effective and productive and efficient. And those who don't, well, they go by the wayside.
And I would also just emphasize, we've had a lot of conversations with managements. There are very, very few revenue drivers at the moment from AI. There are examples where AI is being helped to reduce cost. And I'll give you one example. A big bank, HSBC, typically does big partnerships with other firms. And in the past, their lawyers would get together with the other party's lawyers, and they'd spend 2 months pulling down all the compliance respectively and the differences and so forth. And they're now using AI to do that in a day rather than 4 weeks or 8 weeks.
Right.
But as a revenue driver, there's very, very little evidence of how this is going to create revenues for companies. So that's, an important part of this conversation, because if it's just a productivity tool, its impact for a lot of industries is going to be much more incremental rather than earth-shattering, at least over the medium-term horizon.
And I'd like to piggyback on what Michael said at the very beginning in terms of it's not being creative, and this actually harkens to the entertainment industry and and the strike that they went on recently, where you're using maybe using the same people over and over again in different movies, or you're creating a song based on a body of songs, the data, just as you said, Michael, that's already in there. So you really still do need the human touch. And as goes advisors, I've had advisors tell me that AI has helped them help their clients, by saying, okay, I'm not, for example, I'm not an estate planner per se, but this is something, this is some information that I've gathered up for you, or rules that you may concern yourselves with. And that can actually help business to the extent that you're making use of these tools, that you can help, become more holistic, which is what a client would love, to be able to trust you. And I do think that can help take market share if you're investing in it correctly, than those who maybe don't and are left behind.
Yeah, well, it gets back to your point, Linda, about, you kind of threw yourself under the bus about being scared about the internet here, 25 years ago. And
they were going to find out anyway.
So. Not picking on you. You also called this thing a phone, I think, even if it maybe is officially called a device, because we don't talk on it very much. But I'm just giving you a hard time more than anything else. I think for our guests today, one of the things that comes up repeatedly, at least in our dialogue with our clients about AI, are specific cases in where we have successes, specific ideas where AI is improving, not just from a business and commercial standpoint, but the lives of, of everyday consumers. And I think a lot of us may have some awareness of what that means today here in 2023. But let's, Chris, and I'll put this one to you, and Michael, obviously, Linda, yourselves interject, but in the next 12, 24 months, which may not sound like a long time, but hopefully as this technology improves, it is a long runway. What can we expect? What else is AI potentially going to do to improve our lives?
That's a big one.
What comes to mind, at least?
It's it's fascinating to just recognize that a year ago on this day in October, I admit I did not know and did not realize that ChatGPT even was going to come out within the next month. So sometimes these things come out, they surprise us. And a lot of what I like to do is so I'll just use myself as an example. I personally like to consume a lot of books, some of them about AI technology, some of them biographies, listen to a lot of podcasts. And so I would certainly be hungry for capability to help with and I know there are systems out there, and I'm imagining they're just going to keep getting better and better. You consume all types of information in a given area of interest that you may have, and everybody might have a totally different one. And then frequently you might think, oh, I've read this book, but I don't remember all the detail, or I went to this website, I don't remember, I listened to this podcast, but I can't quite place my finger on it, and I want to reference back. And this idea of referencing back to information is an interesting one, I think, that could be one of the subsequent steps, as we've said on this very call, the ability and facility with different types of language, and maybe the ability to take that and to help us as human beings with imperfect memories to get better and better at being able to access the information that we carry around in our massive computing devices that we all have.
Excellent point. And I know I'm guilty of suffering from some of those shortfalls as well. And, to have some assistance, artificial assistance from, machine learning capabilities would potentially be nice. Michael, I don't know if you have any additional comments to complement Chris's thoughts.
Well, I think what Chris is saying is that it's potentially a wonderful tool at an individual level. And Linda and I were both wearing these things called eyeglasses, which emerged back in the 14th century. And suddenly someone who's very short-sighted was not handicapped like those with perfect vision. And the reality is that there's a lot of people whose ideas, high-quality ideas, they cannot easily put them in written word fast or concisely. They dread that transition. And I think that generative AI is a boon for those individuals. So I think that's important. The broad conclusion is that this should have a productivity impact on a whole range of what we call white-collar industries, where they're people-intensive, word-intensive, again, law, medicine, education, even government. We all hate to get on the telephone call with the service rep at United Airlines. Why? Because often don't have the right answer and they're impossible to get a hold of.
That's for sure.
So you can really see how generative ChatGPT, generative AI can make a lot of that part of our economy much more productive. And that holds some very interesting conclusions, which we can talk about later.
Can I throw in another example right here?
Please do.
Which and I think you started out asking, Joe, about what we might feel and see ourselves within the next year that would affect our lives. And I just thought Michael just said something again that that is interesting to me. Who you dread getting on a call trying to talk to an airline. And they've done some tests where they have an AI-driven customer service representative who the AI representative gets higher results for this was a good call, this was they treated me well. So they're already doing it now. And I don't know that we can expect a light switch to go off, because it depends on what companies get invested. But what I think is really powerful is in the healthcare arena, where today 75% of the monies that healthcare is spending on AI is in radiology. And there are examples when a doctor looks at an X-ray, for example, and says, "This looks good. What do you think? Second opinion, doc, good." And the AI says, "No, you're missing something. You're not seeing something," and that this can help and prevent someone's death, doctor's diagnosis and prescription. And this goes again to it can help. It can be very much additive to an actual doctor. And there's no time sooner we're going to say goodbye to the doctor and I'm going to let the machine, tell me what med I'm going to take. But wow, they're using it as we speak now to generate the molecules for new medicines that we have. This is so exciting for a long life, and really to help billions of people around the world who could never see a doctor, to help them to live longer. So that I think we'll see. We're just going to read more and more and more about it as those companies who invest reap the benefits.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously a key point is who embraces it versus who fears it, and true of any cutting edge technology. I think that is applicable regardless of what we may be talking about. So I appreciate the input.
And this could have hopefully very good implications for economic potential. We all understand the term blue collar productivity, right? So we've had 3 decades where we found ways to make an iPhone with less people. And the question is, could white collar productivity pick up the baton from that driver of the last 3 decades to allow a service-oriented economy like the US grow much faster? I would posit that most of your advisors inherently believe that emerging economies grow faster than developed economies. And the source of this idea is that developed economies have a much higher share of services, right? Government, healthcare, medical. So if you can actually drive productivity in services, then it flips this thinking upside down, and suddenly the more developed economies could potentially have higher structural growth rates than the emerging economies.
Sure. Yeah, obviously that's the hope. And that has been the case, with previous technologies, if you will, Michael. Again, the immediate comparison is the internet, and obviously AI has a backbone based in the internet. But your point's well taken. If we can briefly pivot, but still stay on this subject of we're highlighting the potential benefits, be it economic, be it societal, be it personal at the consumer level. I think one of the things that scares people, not only not knowing exactly what the heck AI means or what it represents, but the perspective of the risks, the ethical considerations, which inevitably come up in conversation about AI. I am curious from all 3 of you here on the panel today, not to scare our guests, but to address, and it's not even the elephant in the room, it's just a material point in the conversation. What should we be worrying about? What are these ethical considerations around AI? And, obviously we can use it for good. Let's highlight what we should be worried about.
You do already see examples of, because if you can generate text, if you can generate audio, if you could generate a voice, you do see different types of hackers and scammers trying to, use it for phishing attacks, use it for automated phone calls. Frequently, the end game is to try to get people to click on a particular link or to put in their password or to send a certain amount of money to potentially a loved one. But it's fake, it's phony, it's a scam. And so you do see, like with any tool, there is the possibility of using it in a positive way, and people are already out there and trying to operate. The fact of the matter is you're able to operate at a certain scale, whereas if you have to type every email yourself, you might send a few hundred a day. If this system is doing it, you might send a few million phishing emails a day. So you're able to do things at a previously unprecedented scale, and that can be scary in certain domains, in certain regards. If, as in a sense, as a population, your defenses need to be that much more attuned and to recognize the certain possibilities of these new types of scams, attacks, phishing expeditions that you can see in your electronic life.
Yeah, or don't have experience recognizing them.
Yeah, and that phishing, I mean, that could be just kid stuff, that could be just the beginning of something, and it's this whole AI and how fast it's going is being described now as the Wild West, which is exactly what the SEC called cryptocurrencies when they started to proliferate. They became all the rage, and and there's a lot of legitimacy to cryptocurrencies, but in the Wild West, bad things happen, and bad actors, can take away a lot of your money. So there are a number of risks here, and I think it starts with, this is new, it's exciting, it's kind of scary because it's happening, it's exploding everywhere, and I don't understand it. Maybe I run a company, and I'm let's say I'm an aging baby boomer, and I run the company, and I never was very comfortable with technology, and I'm resisting even putting this in. And then the employees, well, they're resisting because they're afraid this might take their job, and none of this is productivity enhancing. So then you do have these cybersecurity issues that Chris was talking about. What about data privacy? What if if something that I put out there, it proliferates, and I never said it was that it could. Now you're exposed to being sued if you're a company that uses it. Yeah. The hallucination idea, some of the funny things that the ChatGPT said in response, and that's absolutely not true. And here we are coming upon an election year next year, right? And we may see videos of candidates saying things that they never said in a city that they never were in, and that is really, really scary. Who am I even looking at? And then kind of the crescendo is the artificial super intelligence. And when I started studying this, I went ahead and dialed up 2001: A Space Odyssey, which probably a lot of people in the audience don't even know what that is, but it's too much fun anyway. And the fellow David, the astronaut, he says, "Hal, open up the pod door," and Hal says, "I'm sorry, David, but I can't do that." It's so creepy and scary. And so that, of course, as we all know, some of the leading minds in this AI have been to DC to go behind closed doors and talk about, we've got to slow this down and the risks. So now we have regulators that don't have any clue on this, and they're supposed to regulate this. Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting.
Challenge to say what's good and what's not good specific to any technology, obviously included. And Michael, I welcome your thoughts. I mean, the election next year comes up. I mean, I've seen videos on TikTok and other social media sites, and they blow me away. Where they look pretty darn authentic and sound pretty darn authentic, and sometimes you quickly realize that hey, this thing is just totally fake, which can be really funny or can be completely dangerous. So how that's solved for, I'm not quite sure.
Well, I'm not sure fake media arose with ChatGPT. It's been with us for a very long time. Of course, we have to put guardrails around this. It's a new technology. I still remember as a young boy, my grandmother not wanting to use a credit card because she couldn't understand the concept of credit that wasn't currency based. So we'll figure out the guardrails, and it will take time, but I think it will be done. The best response to bad AI usage is other AI, right? Linda quoted one movie. I'll quote Blade Runner. Who made the better Blade Runner, the human being or the replicant? And the answer was the replicant. And then the final point I would make is you're going to get upset because I'm recalling too much from my high school philosophy class, but there was a famous philosophy problem called What Mary Doesn't Know. And Mary was a world famous neurophysicist who knew everything about color there was to know. She knew the physics, she knew the biology, how the light rays hit your eye and then impact your brain waves. But Mary lived all her life in a black and white world, in a black and white house with no windows, with black and white books and black and white food. And one day, Mary leaves the house and for the first time sees a red apple on a green tree. And the question is, does Mary learn something about color that she didn't know or understand? And I think we all say yes. And my point here is that these are just very fancy, sophisticated compiler programs. They're following sets of instructions. and they don't actually understand the meaning of what they're doing. And they certainly don't understand the human nature side of it. So again, going back to your very original question, demystifying it. I think it deserves to be demystified. This is another of a long history of communication technologies, and I think we'll definitely make the good of it, not the bad of it. I think you're on mute, Joseph.
Sorry about that. Appreciate the optimism. We share it with you, and at the same time, would be remiss if we're not talking about some of these risk considerations as well. We regularly have clients, or more recently regularly have clients, who are asking about AI from an investment standpoint, and either indirectly versus the exposure that they have within their current diversification strategies, or perhaps a little bit more directly if we want to be targeted. Chris, I'll start with you. Any specific thoughts, not necessarily as a plug, if you have any plugs, we're happy to briefly hear those, but in a general sense, is it worth it to be targeted in investing in AI? How can we get exposure in our portfolio to AI? And do we want it?
The way that we've approached it at Wisdom Tree is to kind of think that for AI to really proliferate, it's not just software, it's not just semiconductors and processing power. It might touch certain companies, whether it's healthcare, financial services, cybersecurity, things of that nature. So there are a lot of different dimensions that sort of will transmit, if in fact this is a true mega trend that is going to be with us for 10 plus years, which wasn't true, we think is true. We ultimately sort of advocate thinking broadly across the ecosystem, recognizing that at some points in time, maybe the semiconductor cycle is going to be quite positive, and at other points in time, a certain type of software like natural language processing and generative AI, like we've seen in the last year, is going to be popular. Sometimes the largest companies in the world are going to be well positioned with what the flavor of the day is, which is these large language models. But that next development might push things in a different direction. If you think of past years, there was sort of fintech and cryptocurrency and robotics, and every year or every couple of years, you feel like it's a different topic that is sort of the flavor of the moment and the hot thing. But our thought is, instead of trying to chase or to predict, which is going to be very difficult, the next hot thing or the next big breakthrough, instead, what you can do is just have a diversified exposure to different sorts of companies in what we think of as the overall AI ecosystem.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Linda, Michael?
Yeah. First of all, I was there with the internet and the internet bubble that burst, and a lot of people are comparing this to that as if this is a bubble right now. And back in those days, we were counting eyeballs, if anybody remembers back in those days, as to whether to invest in a company. They may not have even had any revenues yet. So I'm not recommending anything here, but the chat ETF, which has some of the mega names that are involved in this movement right now, is nowhere near as expensive. It's nowhere near as bubblicious, if you will, as we were before that internet burst. And so one of the things that one could do is invest in an ETF like that has many of the big names, many names that people will recognize, and they start with, and we all know NVIDIA, and again, I'm not suggesting any names or detracting on them at all. Sure. But NVIDIA, who has the perfect chips. And so that's an enabler, and there are other enablers, those that are putting together the infrastructure or the software, companies that are adopting AI, and companies that are involved in the security. We spoke of cybersecurity and the various security issues that are helping in that respect. And what is interesting for a company like ours, Federated Hermes, and we have the mutual funds and we have the analysts who are looking for stocks to put in to populate these portfolios. Actually, there are those that are out there looking to screen for companies who are hiring people with an AI background, who are hiring people that can help their company stay ahead of the game here and really reap the benefits while others maybe are not, and those stocks will fall behind. So this kind of movement is actually kind of exciting for stock pickers in that way.
Yeah, well, I think it touches upon, is it beneficial to seek exposure to AI in a direct fashion, or, generally at Towerpoint, as we put together our model portfolios and work with our clients to be properly diversified, is to help people to understand that this new technology is directly incorporated, maybe not in a directly spearheaded fashion, but within the construction of the portfolio in and of itself on a holistic level. There certainly is exposure there as well. Michael, I'm curious your thoughts in terms of what Calamos is doing specific to AI and investing in portfolio construction, and what your thoughts are as well.
Sure. So our first conclusion is that this will, in the short term, be a benefit to the cloud service players, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. They're the only players that really have the scale and resources to do a lot of this training. 99% of corporates are not going to be doing their own AI training models. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the simple direction to look. NVIDIA is probably overdone at this moment. If you can get another company like AMD with a GPU announcement, eventually I think that could be quite material for that stock. But going back to Linda's point, I certainly agree that the broad stock universe is not in bubble territory like we were in the late 1990s, where the internet was assumed to create new companies everywhere. But one of the important lessons is that a winner like Amazon was never a technology company, right? Amazon was a retailer that simply understood how to change the retailing industry. Mm-hmm. And investors are going to have to go through every industry they look at and make very subjective conclusions about the role of AI. Not as a technology, but as a way in which human behavior can be changed across those industries.
So no e-toys when it comes to looking at AI, it sounds like. Not in terms of direct investment, at least. I'm going to wrap things up here in a few minutes. I am curious for all of our guests, if Michael and Linda and Chris, any of you, or all of you, have any specific suggestions to our guests in terms of applications, AI websites, software. Some people are familiar with ChatGPT. We can touch upon that if we want, but what would be some good use case opportunities for our guests to try to embrace AI as directly as they can through the use of an application or website?
There's a website that I came across. It was spelled bear like the animal, so like bear market, or like a grizzly bear in the woods, barely .ai. And what was interesting about it is you could sort of drag the clicker over these different functionalities, whether it's write a blog or build a slide or do these different things, and it would in an animated way, before you even decide if you want to use the software or decide if you want to do any sort of trial period, because frequently the way these sites work is you sign up for a trial, and then after a certain amount of time they start charging the credit card unless you cancel. So essentially, if you go in there, you just see in an animated way what the system working would look like. And I personally was just fascinated by that. So it's sort of a way in which to get, because obviously we know ChatGPT, but it's a way in which to kind of get beyond and maybe look at a site that people might be less familiar with.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Michael, Linda, any thoughts? Not to push ChatGPT aside, but what are both of you using, and what should our guests maybe think about in terms of something interesting?
Well, my wife is a executive search in the executive search industry, and I would say to your audience, take your LinkedIn profile, take your teenage son's resume, and put it through AI, and look for yourself how easy it can be for you to deal with these mundane tasks that I think a lot of us actually dread.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was preparing, or we here at Towerpoint were preparing our script and our outline for the webinar event today. And we've been using ChatGPT more and more over the past 9 to 12 months, and literally just putting the script and some bullet points in and around quotation marks, allowed us to refine and improve this thing in a pretty efficient fashion. So points well taken. Linda, any other follow-up thoughts?
Yeah, I would just like to chime in and say that I would recommend that people go out there and play, go play. Get that ChatGPT and have some fun with it. And when you're with your friends, I mean, everybody's talking about it. Ask your friends, what have you tried and what have you used?
Yeah.
And what I do to just try and dive in and to get comfortable with something that's brand new is I just get my cup of coffee or my glass of wine, and I just sit there in front of YouTube and I just go down the rabbit hole for as long as I stay awake, for as much as I'm interested. You just soak it in, you know what I mean? Just dive in.
Yeah, have
and
some fun with it.
Experience it and pursue then what holds interest for you, because it's going to be in all walks of our lives. So that's what
try to not be afraid of it and try to have some fun with it, and jump in to begin, like any other technology, right, Linda, begin to get familiar with it. And if that means having some fun over a glass of wine, well, I can speak hopefully for the panel and say we're all for it. So, well, in closing, again, we certainly appreciate, obviously, not only each of our attendees and guests and their time out of their afternoons to participate, but Michael, Linda, Chris, your insights, your expertise, your feedback about artificial intelligence, what it means, what it is, and how it's impacting our clients' lives, and obviously our lives as investors, is very useful. And again, here at Towerpoint Wealth, we were hungry to provide a forum and to have an educational asset that our clients, our prospective clients, our colleagues, and our friends can take advantage of, quite frankly, to help them better learn and understand is, again, a core goal of ours here at the firm. And for that, we're appreciative that all three of you could be a part of this. So in closing, I encourage all of our clients and participants to take your phone or your device out and to open up the camera function to scan the code here. And if you don't follow Towerpoint, we're very proactive on various social channels and have been called a good follow, whatever that means, to take a look at what we're doing to put out information like this to our network and our family of friends and colleagues and other centers of influence. So with that being the case, I will wrap up the webinar today. Again, reiterate our thanks to Michael and Chris and Linda, and all of our guests as well. And to Nathan, who's offline, thank you for helping us produce this. And we appreciate it. It's been very fun and very productive.